we had a shot either way Detroit picked, and when Detroit picked the other way and picked the linebacker and we got a chance to get Cansey, it was pretty good.
As you can see, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers almost had your boy. If they didn't get Kalijah Cansey in the draft, they were going to get Jack Campbell. And first thing I want to do is just apologize to Detroit Lions fans, because I was one of the guys who was critical of the pick when I first saw it. And I was critical for different reasons. It wasn't that I wasn't a fan of a Jack Campbell, of a Jahmyr Gibbs. It was just kind of the process in which it happened. And I knew these were both good players, some of the best players in the draft, first round grades, of course. But it was just with the position they play, how would they go in the draft? And my biggest question coming away from it is, who was the threat to the Detroit Lions of taking their player? Now, if you take Kalijah Cansey, I'm also high on a Brian Brzee type guy, and I believed if you didn't get Jack Campbell, Kalijah Cansey and Brian Brzee, those were my two targets who I've mocked to the Detroit Lions previous to the draft. But I'm thinking, if you couldn't have got him, Sam Laporta. Now your draft board is kind of thrown all out of the picture because you didn't get Jack Campbell where you wanted him. He said he wasn't going to fall to the second round. Sam Laporta, do you take him? Where's the linebacker? And I think in a class which was really weak with linebackers, this is why I say you had to move him up on your board. Brad Holmes, I trusted him in this process and basically saying, we got the players we thought were impact players, we thought could impact this team the quickest and the best. This is a team who's trying to compete in the NFC North, and I have to be feeling pretty good. I feel even more confident about how I felt about the pick because of this. Now, interesting for Tampa Bay because I kind of knew they were taking the best player available approach. I knew they weren't as high on Will Levis. I really thought Darnell Wright was their guy, but we see Chicago. Chicago really went kind of high than what a lot of people saw Darnell Wright, but I knew he was one of those premier tackles in the draft. It was all about the other teams see it. Broderick Jones, respectable. Peter Skoronski, respectable, but he doesn't really have the tackle measurables. And Darnell Wright was kind of the guy just sitting there with the Anton Harrison, with guys in that nature, and then he bumped up. A lot of teams wised up, seeing what he did. And we talk about the Will Anderson game, locking down Will Anderson, but he had a lot of other great performances other than just that game is what we have to understand. But Tampa Bay, they didn't want to get a Will Levis. That wasn't their guy, and they understood that, so they took the best defensive player available, which was Kalijah Cansey at that point, thinking he's better than corners on their board. Now, that's debatable, but it's a debate for another day. But if they were going to get Jack Campbell, though, let's say hypothetically Detroit Lions didn't take him. They took Kalijah Cansey. What about Devin White and Levante David? And this is interesting because we talk about Devin White being a trade target. Levante David, potentially a trade target. These guys. Devin White has been inconsistent. Levante David is getting older. And that's kind of my takeaway, the biggest takeaway from this, because we could easily say, okay, the draft is over. Lions got Jack Campbell. Tampa Bay got Kalijah Cansey. We could easily say that. But it's about the what if and what does this scenario create? Because a lot of speculation has already been out about Tampa Bay. Is this team buying? Is this team selling? What are they going to do? But I think for the Detroit Lions, you made the right decision in a very weak. Now, we could talk about the other linebackers in this class. Don't think they were Dan Campbell type guys. And even Todd Bowles in the war room, he's saying, we really think at 18, Jack Campbell is a Dan Campbell type guy. And they knew it because basically that was going to be their guy. And you think about it, Dan Henley, Drew Sanders, Trenton Simpson, I didn't see that for the Detroit Lions. I'm going to be honest with you. And now getting that tight end, which was essential, which is going to be critical for the offense this year, it all fell into place. Now, it can be guys who sits here, and I think a lot of people with the pick, while they were highly critical of it, it wasn't because of Jack Campbell. It wasn't because of Jahmyr Gibbs. I think now, some people we got to understand, every fan of every team doesn't study the draft. Like a guy such as myself, like people who are looking at consistent mock drafts, watching film on all these players. They don't see Jack Campbell, the guy who's the best linebacker in this class, the guy who's a top 5 defensive player in this draft. A lot of people saw LB beside that position tag, and that's enough for them to say no. Because how high are linebackers going in today's NFL? But I think that says a lot about Campbell himself. When we talk about positional value, which some people, take account into, some people don't like positional value. But if we have positional value, which is always going to be a thing, and players who are breaking the mold of positional value, I think that says more about the player more than the GM. I think that's saying more. We could go to Atlanta. I think that's saying more about Bijan Robinson rather than the GM making a bad pick. That's just how good the player is. Some people don't want to understand that. But when football hits the field, people are on the turf, then it's a different feeling because we're seeing these players and they're so great. We don't care where they were picked. We don't care if they're a running back, offensive lineman, defensive lineman. If we get an all-pro, we're getting a Pro Bowler. We don't care about the process. It's all about the player. I think that was a very interesting note, just something I saw and something I wanted to touch on. How would the draft have looked if you got Calijah Kancey and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers got Jack Campbell? I don't think it would have been a home run draft for Brad Holmes in that scenario because where's your linebacker? And I think with him, Anzalone, Rodriguez, Derek Barnes, now we kind of really got something going in that rotation. But outside of that, I didn't like the linebackers too much in this class. I do like Dan Henley. I do like Dorian Williams, guys like that. But it wasn't no guy who I think could have been an impact linebacker. These guys have a lot to learn, freak athletes, but not the most technically sound guys. And Sam Laporta, I mean, any tight end, because we saw Michael Mayer fail, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, those type of guys were still there. But how would that have worked? I'm going to leave you with that thought, and I want to know what you think in the comments. If we didn't get Jack Campbell, how would the draft have looked? Because if we took Calijah Kancey or any of those guys to say, Jack Campbell would have been going at number 19.